All right, everyone, welcome to our AirMiners event on small and mid-sized entities as carbon removal buyers. It's great to see you all here today. I'm Jason Grillo with AirMiners. We have an esteemed panel today of people talking about an unheralded segment of the carbon removal buying landscape. The idea that small and mid-sized businesses can have potential to be a segment that carbon removal companies supplying carbon removal credits can pay attention to, or why they should, what are some of the pitfalls, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that lay there. What really prompted this is this sense that small and mid-sized businesses are making a greater degree of commitment to achieving net zero goals and carbon removal being part of that. We saw this in two sources most relevant. One is the Science-Based Targets Initiative at the 2022 year-end report mentioned that SMEs had a higher proportion of net zero goals than had been previously seen. One, and second, the group ccarbon.info quoted some of the information about from SBTI in a graphic that recently went out in a webinar that they produced. So that really caught our attention, and that's why we're having this today. For logistics, we're going to go as we normally do to have maybe 45 minutes of discussion, and then go to Q&A by you, our audience, so that you can have your questions addressed. Feel free to ask them in the chat. This is being recorded and will be up on our YouTube channel later. We're going to stop our main event at 60 minutes in, so at the top of the hour at noon Pacific time, and then we'll go to networking so that you can all get to know each other, learn from each other a little bit more. Again, we're all extraordinarily busy, so that's an optional networking session at the tail end, but people who've come to them in the past found them really helpful in making connections that can endure. So with that in mind, I want to hand the floor to Luisa Gotiya, and who's going to introduce you to our panel. Luisa, take it away, please.
Thank you, Jason. I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So a little bit about myself. I am the co-founder of the GaiaOne Eco-Resort Network. Our mission is to create an alternative to tourism that focuses on nature protection and restoration while strengthening local communities. And today we have three incredible panelists. So why don't you introduce yourself, Christina?
Thanks, Luisa. Yep, my name is Christina Beckmann. I initiated and lead Tomorrow's Air. We are nested within the Adventure Travel Trade Association. We have created a carbon removal portfolio for our travel businesses and for their travelers to contribute to. We also have a dual mission focused on education for climate conscious travel.
Exciting. And Ian, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Ian Sutherland. I'm the CFO and head of Net Zero at Tide. Tide, the fintech, not the detergent. We are a UK-based fintech that supports small businesses exclusively. So we really go after the SME market, and that's all we ever do. We have about 500,000 customers in the UK and over 100,000 and fastly growing in India. We build software that helps businesses save time and therefore get back to running their own businesses in their financial admin. So we're basically all about doing banking and admin. We became the first fintech to remove 100% of our emissions using durable carbon removal earlier this year. So I'm coming at this a bit from the lens of being both a business that's supporting the SME ecosystem, but also a business that's been on their own net zero journey. So looking forward to the discussion.
And Jesper, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm Jesper, and I'm one of the co-founders of the company Down to Earth. And I work especially with sourcing carbon solutions and offering them to SMBs as a part of their climate strategy. Yeah, and so that's what Down to Earth does, is that it's broker removal solutions and especially targeting SME as our main customer. Yeah.
Well, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to discuss carbon removals with all of you, given your firsthand experience as providers in a market that's growing rapidly and can be a powerful tool in fighting climate change if used responsibly. So let's just start with the fundamentals. Can you quickly simplify how the carbon dioxide removal market works for both producers and consumers and the general key parties in the system we need to be aware of? Christina.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's not that simple actually at this moment. It's still a little bit tangled up, but I think the key parties are the project developers, the people who are creating carbon dioxide removal projects, and you have intermediaries. Tomorrow's Air is, I think of us as kind of like an intermediary or a retailer. And then you have the end customer, which is a small, in my case, a small or medium-sized travel business, or those travelers who are customers of that business. There's also certifiers and registries who can help provide greater trust in the carbon removal production that's actually happening. That's how I would simplify the players in the market, but I'm also really interested to hear how the other panelists break it down. It's changed, it's gotten more complex since we started in 2020, which was not that long ago.
Yeah, I can echo that, Christina. I think that, or I would divide it something similar. Like you have the producers, and you have some form of certifying body, a standard providing MRV, and then you have some form of broker, and then the end customers. And then I think what we have in the beginning now is that some actors have like maybe two of these roles, and then as the space progresses, you will probably get more specialized roles moving forward. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I would say that, I could completely echo everything that's been said. I think the sort of bit that I see also as part of the whole ecosystem, and I'm maybe coming at it from more of an accountant lens as a CFO, but sort of first of all, understanding our own carbon footprint as a business is kind of how we got into it. So as a business, we would never have entered into this whole world of carbon removal if we didn't know initially what our footprint was. And so I think there's also maybe on the periphery of the carbon removal ecosystem, there's also sort of carbon accounting and how we think about what our emissions are as businesses and what we therefore we'd like to do about that. So that's just another lens I can maybe bring to the discussion.
I like that. That's true. And Jesper, what you said about some of these businesses having more than one, there are players who carry more than one role. It does not lend itself to simple mapping.
I mean, clearly we can see there's a lot of parties. And as you said, something to keep in mind is that it hasn't been that long since we've been talking about this and developing the policies and the system around it. So it's ever changing. And I would love in the chat to see the different players. So if you're part of any of the categories mentioned before, would love to know who's here today with us. Now, so this conversation is about the SMB market. So who is the SMB market and what are they looking for in CDRs or carbon removals?
You want me to go first?
Yes, go ahead, Christina.
So I think in general, I'm not sure there's a really hard and fast definition, but we think of SMB as businesses with 250 or fewer employees. And then we also look at revenues. So might be under $50 million in revenue or 10 million. Also, there's kind of the micro category, which maybe is under 2 million. A lot of the sustainable travel tour businesses who are the early adopters in Tomorrow's Air are in the micro and small, so under 10 million and under 2 million. And in terms of what they're looking for, I think, a lot of the folks that I'm talking to are not necessarily looking for carbon removal, but they are looking for sustainability strategies and climate strategies. And so once they understand that there's a category of carbon removal that's focused on permanent storage and involves technology, which is kind of how we work into it. Then they're really interested in it, and it's sort of they're like, okay, well, how does this fit in to what I'm already doing? Or if I'm not doing anything yet, maybe like to Ian's point, they're in the starting, doing their emissions calculation. They're thinking about like, how will this figure in once I have all my emissions calculated? They are interested in confidence. Obviously, they want to have trust in what what they're investing in, what they're supporting. And they're also really keen on the story. How does this connect to my business? How does this connect to my travelers? How will I fit it into the sustainability narrative of my business? They really want to be able to talk about it. All of my businesses that I'm working with are a lot of times the inbound is coming to me from a marketing lead. Not, a lot of the businesses I work with don't even have a sustainability lead yet.
Jesper, how does that compare to your understanding of the market?
Yeah, I echo that, and a bit on how what they're looking for is our experience from working with the SMBs is that they're looking for solutions in how they can actively participate in the fight against climate change, and also combining that with increasing the sustainability value. I believe CDR really has a role to play there, and as a tangible solution, it's really something that people are getting their eyes up for. At the same time, if you look at the diffusion of innovation curve, we're still quite early. So it's like the innovators, those who want to be first, who often it is one individual in the company who really gets the why in carbon removal and kind of are placed with the right resources and the authority to help the company into it. So we're still quite early, but yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, would you like to add anything?
When we think about the SME space, it actually going on what Christina said, I think we think about it a lot about the micro end actually, because if you look at any market, we're in the UK. There's 5.5 million SMEs in the UK. About 5.3 million of them have less than 10 employees. So they're businesses that effectively don't have a finance function, and never mind a sustainability manager. So actually, these are businesses that are usually owner managed, one or two employees in the median, and so if you're kind of looking at the whole ecosystem of SME, that's kind of a business that doesn't really have a specialist on this particular topic, nor do they have a specialist necessarily in finance. And I think that's very important, because it means that when we're trying to approach SMEs, we need to make sure we build tools, build products, and therefore the marketing of those products needs to sort of resonate with that type of individual, because it's going to be completely different than it would be if you're selling into a corporate or a sustainability manager. I think I'm not necessarily sure I'll have all the answers on this call, but it's just worth bearing that in mind, and that these people are quite time poor. They're spending a lot. They really want to get involved in net zero journey. But they're a bit kind of lost. I think there's been, we're at peak. Someone said on a panel recently, we're at peak confusion at the moment. And there's too many different kind of views on this. But hopefully on this call we can try and hone in on what actually matters.
Ian, you touched on a really important point about the size of these companies and the bandwidth they have to start thinking about a sustainability strategy. And the news covers large amounts of investment from large companies purchasing carbon offsets to meet their ever-increasing net zero goals. But rarely do we talk about SMBs as a nascent market. So I would love to know, why should we involve SMBs now? And how do we start to do that? Like, how do we tackle the adoption obstacles so we can push this forward as fast as we can? It's not like we have that much time.
Exactly.
Christina, go ahead.
I can jump in. Sorry, Christina, you go.
No, that's okay. Why don't you, Ian, carry you were in the thought.
I was just gonna say I was in the thought about mentioning that, you know, on the back of what Jesper said, like I think SMEs are quite savvy and tend to be quite digitally savvy, technologically savvy, and they really like to think about, you know, innovative things and being on earlier in the kind of adoption curve. You know, they can make decisions more quickly. As a result of that, there's no corporatism in an SME because by definition. So actually appealing to that sense of entrepreneurship is really important, and trying to you know, tell the story a little bit like you know, there's ways to do this that are far more sustainable, and you know, helping them understand the kind of the real the basics of carbon accounting and removal, and trying to be on that journey, I think is really important. It's certainly how I got into it as a CFO of a business. It's not necessarily an SME; it's more of a medium-sized business. But you know, we worked with partners who could have really helped us on that journey. But it kind of clicked at some point that this was something we could support and really help get the nascent market going and the ecosystem going. So I think SMEs have this sort of same feeling about, you know, supporting each other, and so that's something that we can appeal to.
I see that completely in our audience too. The sense of the small businesses a little bit being the best ones to be early adopters because they're fired up, because they're progressive. They pride themselves on making, you know, being able to make decisive moves and make them quickly. So like appealing to the sense of entrepreneurship is spot on. You know, when we got going with Tomorrow's Air, I was like, well, this is perfect for the sustainable adventure travel community, because these people know what's at stake and they really are not daunted by really big problems. In fact, they love really big problems and they love really big challenges. So that, you know, what you said there is perfect. I think they're sort of the boots on the ground. And if we don't engage these folks, you know, we need small businesses and we need their customers. You know, I think of carbon removal as like a movement. You know, we want to mainstream carbon removal as something that is like commonplace and talked about a lot. And if you only kind of hear about it from these sort of unreachable stratospheric companies that are making multi-million-dollar investments, you never feel like that really is you. Or, you know, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to hope that these people with really big budgets can get this done for us. But, you know, we wanted to create like an easy on-ramp for individuals and small businesses, because I think that also is where you start to influence how people, you know, what's in their mind, and maybe they're going to vote differently, and maybe they're going to spend a little bit longer on that New York Times article. So I think that's a really important reason to focus on SMEs now, even though, and then I'll shut up, I mean, they're just as time consuming as a really big corporate partner. And so, I mean, sometimes I think my deals go faster, but like I can understand why it's, you know, we need to get the corporate investment and have that moving also. And so, you know, SMBs are maybe less appealing to focus on because their individual investments are smaller.
I think this is super interesting, and if we look at the obvious answer is, of course, if you look at the, you know, how much we need to scale the carbon removal industry, we will never get to, you know, 10 gigatons a year by 2050 without the SMEs. It's a sleeping giant. And if you only look at Europe, it's like they also, you know, have more than 50% of the emissions by companies as well. So it's a no-brainer, but it's also really interesting when you're looking at the big players moving, and how can we get the SMEs going as well. As yeah, it's really really key if we're, you know, are to be close to scale up the industry as much as we need.
Absolutely true. I mean, that's something that hits home, is this idea of incorporating everyone, right? We're not going to get to our goals if we don't incorporate everyone into the conversation in any shape or form that we can. So with that in mind, with competing information and solutions becoming more available, why should SMBs include carbon removal in their sustainability strategy to reduce their carbon emissions? Jesper, why don't you continue?
Yeah, so I think it what's really important is that when you work with an SME, you kind of need to find out, in order to how do we kind of get them going, is that you need to find out where they are in their climate journey. As Ian said as well, is very different how big the company is and how much resources they have, and kind of where are they and what are their motivation. So I think what's our experience is that you really need to help them see how tangible carbon removal solutions can be, so they can kind of get the why of carbon removal, and kind of look for places in the company's value chain and how carbon removal can be used to either as an insetting or in a way to create a stronger narrative for their company's sustainability strategy. I think is key.
During one of our earlier conversations, you had mentioned the paper cup example. Can you expand on that a bit more?
Yeah, I think that it's always, you often get the question of like the moral hazard around carbon removal and decarbonizing. And I think if you look at an SME that, like we have a customer that's a coffee shop, and they already do what they can to, how they can decarbonize their business. And also SMEs are, there's only so much we can do as long as the society is hooked on the CO2 grid, to use that expression. And I think that there's just if you take the coffee shop, for instance, all their coffee beans, it's not possible for them to decarbonize how it's transported. So carbon removal comes out as a good solution for them to do something about that footprint. So you can embed it into the cup of coffee, for instance. And there's a lot of possibilities there, regardless of what the business are doing, where you can incorporate it into their value chain, and it's an attractive way for them to work with their sustainability.
Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk with our customers about why they should invest in carbon removal now, it centers a lot around this is the necessary future, and you are going to need this. You're going to need it later, and you can start learning about it now. I often really lean on the learn by doing, and also like start small. It's sort of, I think it resonates with them, the idea that at least in travel, I think they sometimes align it a little bit with different technologies that they feel overtake them in business in the past. Like we were slow to implement whatever, a CRM system, or we were slow to do fill in the blank thing in the past. And we don't want to be slow on climate. And that is a really good motivator. And also to sort of say, this is like, if you want a really great strategy, you should be able to tell your customers how you're reducing, how are you transforming travel. There's operational transformations, itineraries can be shifted. There's all kinds of things you can do on reductions, which is all this climate conscious travel conversation. And then there's all kinds of things you can do on removals, and what a great set of options are out there, and how exciting this is going to be. And you're going to be ahead of the game, and also be able to convey how progressive and forward thinking you are. I think, but it also is kind of debatable, because sometimes you'll have somebody who's like, yeah, I don't know if it's a priority right now. I think the thing that you have to counter a little bit is like, I'm a super small business. I'm not the biggest part of this problem. That guy's the biggest part of this problem. And when I get into that kind of conversation, I'm always like, well, yeah, but if we're all pointing different directions, the time to sort of do something is now, be part of the movement that helps us progress.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's where we got to on our journey, is that we realized that, you know, that we can do something. You know, the more we learned about removal as a part of our net zero journey alongside reduction. So it's never one or the other. It's always, for us now, it's always both, because you, as was pointed out, you know, we can't remove everything. Sorry, we can't reduce everything today. And so for me, it was always a bit, how do we balance the books of our CO2? Like, we know our emissions are, we had 3,700 tons of emissions last year as a business. And some of that is things that, you know, we will still have to do, you know, travel being one of them. You know, we're still going to have to, we're a multi-country entity, so travel is still going to be something we have to do, but we can do things, we can do smart things about how we reduce our travel footprint, actually. But you know, we're always going to want to remove some of that, and if we can move that with durable carbon removal, then we're doing even better there. And so that sort of idea of like a P&L, like a kind of profit and loss statement for your carbon, like, really resonated with me. But maybe that's because I'm an accountant, but also I think it does when I speak to people about that whole topic of, you know, offsets versus removals as well. You know, the actual fact that you can remove your emissions is actually quite a there's a sort of light bulb moment for me when I sort of thought about it. You know, for a while it was we can figure this out, but like, when we actually realize that there are technologies out there that can scale, that will potentially be a big part, they have to be a big part of solving this climate crisis. You know, we need to get in there now. We need to be fast adopters and promote that ecosystem. And so yeah, there's a lot to kind of, I mean, educate, I think, you know, about around the data, about how small things matter, and that actually, you know, you just got to start somewhere. Start by doing, not by talking and pointing, as you said, Christina.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for touching on reductions and removals when it comes to like insets and offsets. And that leads us directly into the trust conversation. So what should carbon removal providers do? And better yet, what are your respective companies doing to de-risk carbon offsets and instill trust in this ever-evolving market? Christina.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, transparency is one of the foundations of building trust. So carbon removal providers, the more transparent they can be, the better. Of course, having some third-party certifier definitely helps. You know, with Tomorrow's Air, we work with carbon removal providers that are certified and also that are selling through a registry. And you know, we lean on that kind of heavily to be able to say it's not just because Tomorrow's Air is also a small, you know, we're a small team. The Adventure Travel Trade Association, that is our parent, is a small outfit. And so we don't have a deep scientific team. You know, we lean on what the bigger organizations are publishing around the due diligence on different technologies. So you know, if you're a carbon removal provider, whatever you can publish about your methodology and however you get into the discourse and have yourself certified or on a registry, that helps to be able to sell you. And it also helps our buyers trust what we're selling.
Yeah, and I think that like the key hurdle for everyone now is like, you have this general lack of compliance. Like, it's hard to know the quality of what you're purchasing, and this again is easy to lead to lack of trust and, you know, the fear of greenwashing. And things are happening in the space to try and do something about this. But I believe that the carbon removal producers who will be more attractive and will kind of win forward is those who have a more holistic approach to how they do things. Like, it's not enough just to have a carbon credit, and you need to look at the environmental justice, you need to look at the social benefits, and of course you need to have a certifying body that's good recognized by the space. And as well, I think, like in Europe, when the carbon removal certification framework rolls out, hopefully it will make it more easy. But I think it's really important from a producer standpoint that you need to have a holistic approach to go about if you want to attract buyers and try to take away some of that fear of trust. And companies, even if they're big or small, they don't like risk. So if you can mitigate some of that risk by having a really comprehensive way of how you do things and be really transparent, I think that's key.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add there, but I suppose from our perspective, when we purchased removals, yeah, it was important to us as a business that it was an accredited removal. I also think there is something about business. I understand that businesses will not necessarily be accredited from day one as well. So there is something here about how you can tell the narrative about your journey towards accreditation, and what are the steps it needs to get there. Because I think to unlock, there's a bit of a chicken and egg for some businesses. I think from being at Carbon Unbound last week, I heard this a lot around MRV and proving it, the science works and things like that. So I think that the transparency point is really important, but like having that transparency through like what are the journeys, these are the steps we're going to make, a bit like an investor deck, let's say, but be very public about that and say this is how we're going to get to that point, is going to be really important for earlier stage carbon removal businesses, I think.
That, just to build on that real quick, and that's exactly true. When we first partnered with Climeworks, it was like 2019, late 2019, and it was absolutely kind of like, here's our plan, here's what we're doing, and then you have meetings with these people and you say, these are earnest people, I have trust in this team. So, and I think it is important also for SMBs to, because they have maybe an easier time decision making, and because maybe they're deploying lower amounts of money, investing in businesses that are in early stages, in projects that are in early stages, is kind of a neat idea and a good idea, and maybe they can be the early adopters and help spark that, help spark more projects to get further down that accreditation path.
I love that idea of, to some extent, just having trust in innovation and the early adopters. Eventually you'll catch, what's not caught at the very beginning, but you just need a plan and go with it. Like similar to what was said before, actions first, right? Stop talking about it, let's just go, and then we'll figure it out as we go. So as we've said, this is a nascent market, it's ever evolving. What are the market trends you're all noticing in this market for SMBs? Christina, go ahead.
So trends in terms of our buyers, I know that I saw one of the things in the chat here about greenwashing, and if that has just kind of ruined it for everybody. I think the trend I'm seeing is a new openness to the portfolio approach kind of idea. I just had a call this morning with a company who's like, our CEO was all about being carbon neutral and purchasing 100% of carbon offsets of a certain type. And now they're, thinking more about what's a net zero goal look like, and what does a portfolio of actions look like, and what might we publish that would lay out our journey. And that, I think, is really encouraging. So one trend I might say is a general openness to, I don't necessarily have to make a huge 100% carbon neutral claim, which is, especially in travel, there was a lot of that. So that's one trend. And then another, I am hearing a little bit, marine-based carbon removal is definitely got people's attention, as well as enhanced rock weathering. So, when we started direct air capture, nobody had heard of that. Everybody was like, what are you talking about? And now the direct air capture is like old hat. Yeah, oh, we get that. Now I'm really curious about these other things. So I think those would be my two trends. Maybe my third trend would be, it is lightning fast. Like the dynamics of what people are learning and what they're catching on to, it just moves super quick.
That's promising. Jesper, what trends are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it depends a bit on where the buyer are as well. Is like the first purchase that they do, it's often about if the more tangible the solution can be to kind of understand in the first place what carbon removal is key. And once they've kind of done some purchases, they're more kind of okay. There is a variability of solutions there. We can do some portfolio approach to it, and I think that it's also important. They want to buy a climate solution. It's like I can't echo that enough. It's you really need to be showing not only like the carbon credit, you need to have a more holistic approach to it, and I believe that it's really important from a producer standpoint to, regardless of the solution, try to how can you make it transparent and as tangible as possible, because it's really they're looking for things that can kind of boost their sustainability value. So in a way they can showcase it to their customers, and customers is really important. So it needs to be something you can kind of push onward. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a kind of trend for businesses to, obviously improve their sustainability credentials in general. But one thing I see a lot is people starting to understand more what net zero actually means. And if you kind of go into the literature, you'll find quite quickly that net zero is like the definition really is Science Based Targets Initiative. And its definition certainly is reduce your emissions by 90% and remove the remainder of your emissions with carbon removal. It does not say anything about offsets. It actually says durable carbon removal in there. So it's really important that people understand that. But I think there's an increasing trend that people are starting to understand that. And therefore, knowing where we need to get to is really helpful in, therefore, being part early on about how do we do removals today.
Great. Well, before we go into Q&A, do you have any closing thoughts of messages that you want to leave our audience, hopes and dreams, anything we haven't touched on yet?
That's a good one. I guess my closing thought or hope and dream would be, don't discount the SMB. Like, if you're interested in selling to SMBs, like, do it. And if you're, a project developer, don't discount the power of the SMB. That might be my closing thought. I mean, obviously we're not discounting it because here we are on this panel, and that's a first.
Yeah, I'm really happy that we can discuss this and try to push it forward. I believe SMBs is a huge opportunity because they move faster than the bigger companies, which we need them, but they have really thorough long-term processes so I think SMBs is a key for producers also to get sold more credits faster. So it's an opportunity, really.
Yeah, and I think as was pointed out earlier, it's really important to remember that SMBs are a huge part of the economy, greater than 50% of the private sector revenues and emissions in the UK and elsewhere. So they have a huge part to play. And also a lot of the panelists, the folks joining this call will be SMBs themselves. So, we can learn a lot from our own experiences in terms of how SMEs really are innovative and part of the bigger economy, and I really think that plays well into the carbon removal space that will ultimately be born from many thousands, I hope, or millions even, of SMEs themselves.
Absolutely inspirational. It's been really educational for me, especially listening to all of you. But the wisdom doesn't stop here. Jason, please, let's go into Q&A.
Yes, we're going to defer to the wisdom of crowds. Hey, specifically our audience. Although I do have one question myself. Again, putting on my marketer hat for a second. One aspect of SMBs that maybe some of our project developers and startups have is, how do you reach them? Is it a matter of developing like a direct sale to a small entity yourself, going through a channel, doing like SEO, search engine optimization? How do you find the right marketing channel to reach them? Because I think this came up earlier that, look, there's a lot of interest in getting this multi-million-dollar deal by a large company, and that's great. I mean, to be clear, that's been the mainstay, and that's really gotten the industry off the ground. If to approach a smaller entity or an aggregated group of smaller entities, what's the best way to do that? Through a portal, through a channel, through other, through a intermediated broker discussion? Curious to get your thoughts.
I can share, we are nested within a travel association, which that membership gave us the first audience. So we are speaking to a specific type of small and medium-sized travel business. I mean, we have a direct access to those that are members of the association, but what that gave us, actually, knowing that that's who I was first talking to, is a very clear persona of the kind of SMB I want. I think less of course, all the technical things, like should it be a portal, or what's the right channel to market to them. But I think the first step is, who are you? Who are you actually wanting to talk to? I would narrow down what industry are you really interested in, or what geography are you really interested in small businesses, so that you can empathize with those business owners much better.
It's a key question, Jason. I think that looking at finding new buyers, a good place where we start is that we look at, there often comes out different reports that scores different companies. So you need to look at companies who are early adopters or innovators. So finding those companies who already are, what do you call it, at the forefront of climate, who wants to do more. So you need to that's the place to start, and a good place to approach them. And I think it's really time consuming, but it is, increasing the knowledge base. So like, you need to what we do is that we initiate the conversation and talk to them, and it is time consuming, but I haven't found another way. I think that to get new buyers into the space, a platform is great, but I think a lot of those companies, they will never get to the platform without having a conversation first. So it is that the really time-consuming job about connecting with companies and explaining them about carbon removal and how it can be a valuable solution for them, I think is where it starts.
I think it's very hard. I think it's a great question, because the challenge of SMB is very, very diverse. There's so many different sectors in SMB, so it's really hard to pick out like a way to channel, a particular product. I mean, obviously Christina's doing a very great job of this travel sector piece, but if you think about the SME market as a whole, the 5 million SMEs in the UK, there's never like one sector that's more than like 5 to 10%. So it's really hard to kind of reach that, but I think that this will evolve. It's probably not there yet, but I think that over time we'll see more ways to partner with things that are in this ecosystem, like carbon accounting providers, for example. As I mentioned earlier, I think businesses that are already starting to learn about their carbon footprint are definitely more minded to then go and do some removals. And I know that a lot of these carbon accounting providers are thinking about how to develop the wider ecosystem of removals as well on top of that. So I think these sort of marketplaces will evolve. I certainly think that that's how we will at Tide approach it as well. So we want to be able to offer that to our wider ecosystem, our SMEs as well, but it's just not there yet. I think this is what I would hope for in 2 or 3 years' time, when this has evolved a little bit more, is it's much easier to get your product to market, because there will be these marketplaces out there that really support the SME ecosystem, which is by nature very hard to reach and target.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Going to some audience questions. Mark Pastore, if you have the ability to do so, could you unmute and ask your question?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. Very interesting discussion. Christina and Ian and Jesper all touched on some of the specific characteristics that might make SMEs or SMBs really well positioned to be on the innovation curve, the early part of it, for adopting carbon dioxide removal. My question is, could there potentially be value in creating an advanced market commitment, something similar to Frontier Climate, what they're doing with large corporations, that is specifically focused on the qualities and needs of small and medium businesses?
I mean, I think so. Sure. For sure. Tomorrow's Air, initially, we had this notion in travel can we aggregate lots of small and medium-sized travel businesses to move as one on a few, instead of having all these fragmented actions, can we get en masse a bunch of small and medium-sized travel businesses to support direct air capture, enhanced weathering, and biochar? Because those are, we know those are important technologies with great potential to scale. We're in that, just kind of in that one sector, but I think absolutely something like that would be terrific, because that's what they need to be aggregated to really feel their full force.
It's a great question, Mark, and I think we will see a lot more of that in the years to come. We experience this from the customers we're working with, that especially banks, for instance. There's when the companies start to look at each other and see what they're doing, they can nudge each other into to kind of do more. So there's, I think, absolutely a possibility to get more, get them to work together and nudge each other to purchase. I think is creating some FOMO there. I think there's a good potential there. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's been touched on a little bit is that this sort of aggregation of a pool would actually help. I think some segments of SME market, just to sort of demystify it a little bit, make it simpler as a buying decision, so that they're not, so feeling like they're right on their own if they have to go and buy one specific technology or whatever. So actually, the aggregation method actually should lend itself really well to an SMB place where you don't have a sustainability manager who can go out and do loads of vetting of different things or whatever. So actually, it's a really, really good point.
Great. Heather Langsner had a question as well. Heather?
Hi. I'm on both sides of the equation. My next new job is going to be to create a site that does the carbon accounting and reporting for SMEs specifically, and gets them aligned with some removal solutions when there's the gap at the end. And I'm also going to be a removal supplier through EWR, Enhanced Rock Weathering and Marine-Based Solutions. And that is also something that's just getting started. So my question is kind of like more about if I'm going to try to create like a basket of solutions for, let's say, an individual client that's a small to medium-sized enterprise, would they be better to think about an offtake agreement or a pre-purchase agreement, or some other situation like was just discussed, in for a small to medium-sized enterprise, they may not have like the amount of money that the larger companies have to put towards something. So would it be better to sort of create some kind of functionality that would group together, kind of like, I saw this website called Kiva, where you kind of list the removal project and have an amount that you want to get raised, and have as much dollars go toward that one solution, and maybe have them, have a selection of them, and then have the SMEs choose which ones they want to contribute to, or something like that. I don't know what's best, but maybe the panel has like some suggestions about you know, what are the specific challenges that an SME is facing in terms of, you know, getting some money for this and actually putting some money into a removal solution.
Hey, what are your thoughts?
I'll give it a go. I think it depends a lot on where the purchaser are in their CDR journey. So if there's talk of new purchaser, I think you really need to, they need to have a solution that where delivers the removal in a, you know, not within 4 or 5 years to kind of get them going. And if they're, when they're more mature, like offtakes agreements and stuff can be more, then with the more they understand about the space, the more you can go into those things. But I think it really depends on how experienced the buyer is and what kind of SMEs it is. If it's a really small business or if it's a larger SME, that also is something that's need to be factored in.
Yeah, I think with regards to the offtake thing, I think that's something that probably is some, you know, I've looked at it as a buyer, but haven't yet gone there, mainly because I suppose it's one step further in terms of how you know, investing in ecosystem. So it's, you know, our first purchase was biochar credits that had already been produced. So, you know, next time around, we probably will be looking at offtake agreements. I think there's something here about the cost curve and trying to explain that to the market. You know, if you can get in earlier, then that potentially can help you on the cost side of things. I think there's also the conflict is a little bit like, you know, delivery risk and things like this. So insurance will have a part to play here. I think that's a nascent part of this industry as well. And I'd like to see that, you know, fully developed so that we can actually support better these offtake agreements so that they can be more sort of investable, let's say. But I'd love to see more of that because I think it's only going to help investment really at the end of the day, and that's what we all want to see.
Insurance was one we forgot to mention in the players in the market at the beginning. There's not I mean, it's starting. I agree. I was talking with the Kita folks at Carbon Unbound.
Got it. Excellent. Excellent. So, other question, Lucy Pustova, if you have the ability to unmute, please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the insights. I'm coming at this from a nature-based carbon removal project. And I would like to hear your insights on the key differences in the priorities and the decision-making between corporates and SMEs. So specifically around like price sensitivity, or if they're more sensitive to like geographical location of the project, perhaps if they prefer like close proximity to the project, and kind of a little bit also along with Heather's question about kind of how far in advance are they able to plan. I know it's kind of hard to generalize about the market, but yeah, I would just love to hear your insights on that. Thank you.
I can just pop quickly on that. Most of our buyers want to be catalytic. They see themselves as catalytic and being part of a collective, and their price sensitivity is not super high. Not all of our businesses even yet have a complete emissions profile. They're in the process of doing that. So they know that they are making a contribution versus trying to, not many of them are ledger balancing right now. So the price sensitivity that's not their top concern. They want to be part of the movement doing good things. They definitely do care more and more about the geographic location. We, you know, I say a lot, we all share the same air. We remove CO2 from anywhere. We all benefit. And, you know, for sure they get that. And we try and develop, you know, sexy graphics to help promote that. But they are, you know, very definitely going to be interested in things that are relatable and close to them.
Yeah, we're certainly sensitive to that. We want to because we're UK and India focused business, we really want to support the ecosystem of UK and India carbon removal markets as well. So it's something we haven't done yet, to be honest, but we are very much actively looking at that to try and invest in those countries, because that's where most of our employees are based as well.
Totally echo that. It's super interesting, but for some reason, or it's maybe understandable, but the more you can kind of resonate with things, so keep it local. It's added value if you can do that.
Thank you.
And Jason Hoff had a follow-up to that as well, about patterns about they're choosing different kinds of CDR purchases and how they're making those decisions. I mean, it sounds like you got to some of those concerns as well, but any parting thoughts, since this is going to be the last question that we'll have in our Q&A.
And Jason, can I jump in for a second and push?
Yeah, sure. Quick. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, very quickly. So you mentioned, Christina, you mentioned that they're more interested, less price sensitive, but more interested in kind of being a part of impact. How are they making sense of impact? I mean, there's so many different directions with some of the current options for buying credits. How do they see impact, or how are you presenting that to them to help them understand which of those different options, purchases for credits would best be in their interests?
We look at impact on a number of different categories. We're also looking at the communications impact and the education impact, as well as the carbon dioxide ordered for removal. So they see impact in terms of, how many tons did they order for removal, but they also are interested in the impact of how many travelers did they reach with their message. And then we have some, we also do some light surveying, like, did your knowledge of carbon removal change anything about your travel? Are you reading our climate conscious travel content? Did this affect you in any way? So they're thinking of being part of this mainstreaming of carbon removal. They are looking, I did have one guy say last week, like, are the prices coming down yet? Because I was like, well, Eric, not quite yet. So they're like looking at the cost curve. They're thinking of wanting to buy more and more removals and see that impact in terms of CO2 stored in the ground, but it has broader dimension.
Got it. All right. That's all the time we have for questions and answers today. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who asked a question. Thank you to the rest of our audience. Thank you to Christina and Ian and Jesper, and particularly to Luisa. Luisa and Jesper as well are up at a fairly early hour of the morning. It's a low single-digit number in the time zones where they're located. So really appreciate the extra effort on that part. And I just want to say that we have a few items I want to keep your mind of. One, again, sorry if we didn't get to your question. Emails are in the chat of each of the panelists and Luisa as well as the moderator. Also, a post-event survey. We want to hear what we did well, what we didn't do so well, how we can get better for next time, because we want to produce programs that are in service of you, our audience. And what, we can't do our job here in AirMiners unless we hear what our customers, such as yourselves, who are paying time and who are paying attention and spending time with us, are interested in. So that's why we put our post-event survey out there. Finally, just a reminder, Launchpad applications for our accelerator program are due on Friday, October 13th, Friday, October 13th, Friday, the 13th of October. Launchpad applications are due. It's free to apply, free to attend. So feel free to send an application our way if you're a small carbon removal company who wants to work with other people in a cohort for 6 weeks starting in November through mid-December. So that's what we've got up for us. Our next event will be on October 31st. And I'll let you know from what our topic is going to be. I've got the idea in mind. working on what the panels are going to be. So keep your eyes open and we'll go from there. Until then, folks, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.